"2008 was a banner year for superheroes in cinema. The twin successes of Iron Man and The Dark Knight seem to point the way toward two alternate but equally valid paths forward for the still nascent superhero genre. This divide was made all the more pronounced for the central characters having originated from two rival comics publishers, each in a movie produced by the closest either company will ever have to owning their own studio, and incidentally the financial wizardry and weird reverse merger that saved Marvel from bankruptcy and eventually produced Marvel Studios could fill an entire book on its own, so I will not dwell on that aspect of the story other than to mention that it exists. Film fans and superhero fans alike eagerly awaited what each studio would do next. In the case of Marvel, the answer was a string of appealing multi-genre films that not only reintroduced some of the icons of yesteryear to a fresh new audience, but also pioneered, and continues to pioneer, a thoroughly contemporary multimedia serialized form of storytelling that will be remembered as the herald of a new approach to cinema narrative in an increasingly digital and multimedia world. DC? Well-intentioned disappointment? Disaster? Well-intentioned disappointment, and the upcoming fan service The Movie, which suggests the obvious question, what the hell happened at DC? Because I'll be honest, if you'd asked me in 2008 which of the two movie houses would be the one to churn out the next action socio-political commentary fusion masterpiece, I would have said DC on the strength of The Dark Knight. But here we are in the post-Winter Soldier world, and I'm just completely baffled. So first, before we can identify the cause of DC's problems, we have to identify the root problem. And obviously, there are a lot of minor instances of incompetence that shoot the kneecaps from under DC's recent cinematic output, but I would argue that the root of their problems is just that they're too hasty, and simultaneously, too damn slow. Remember when Man of Steel was being developed and the hunt was on for a director? Choosing Zack Snyder for the job was clearly a very rushed decision, aimed at closing things out as quickly as reasonably possible. An art house auteur like Darren Aronofsky would have required endless rounds of negotiation to get on board, even if he would have totally been worth it. Which he would, but Zack Snyder? All respect to the guy, but he was the easy choice, the quick choice, the painless choice, a choice that bore all the hallmarks of having been made quickly and under a great deal of pressure. And yet even that quick choice didn't make things move any faster. The project had been announced ages ago, they had picked a director quickly to expedite things, and Marvel still managed to put out 4 films in the period of time between Snyder's hiring and the release of the finished movie. And all 4 of those films were better reviewed than Man of Steel. You saw a similar problem with the Green Lantern movie, which, if you remember, was supposed to be the one that would launch the DC movie franchise in earnest the first time around. But after an agonizing round of promotion and retouching, the finished product, while not quite as bad as you remember, was incredibly slapdash, and in both script and special effects was at least 2 passes away from finished. Oh, and it was also helmed by a talented but easy-to-acquire journeyman director. So the production of these movies tends to be rushed, but they still take a dog's age to finish. Now that we have identified the problem, we still have to ask and answer, why? Well, I would argue it's largely, or at least in part, about corporate structure. For a counterpoint, look at Marvel. They are owned by Disney, yes, but they are permitted a great deal of individual autonomy under that banner. They even occasionally get into conflicts with their rodent masters, as with the Big Hero 6 publishing spat that you had last year. In other words, Marvel Studios has the clout of a mega studio, but the agility of an upstart. Now, let's look again at DC. They are owned by Warner Brothers, but instead of a sharp separation between the parent company and its comics movie division, there seems to be very little separation at all. A case could be made that Legendary Pictures forms a comparable partition, but given that Legendary is now in the comics business itself under an independent banner, I would be rather skeptical of that. There is an old Hollywood adage that making a change or decision at a major company or studio is like turning an aircraft carrier. It takes a lot of work, and even if you fully commit to it, it will be ages before the change is even visible. This, in short, is what I think is going wrong at DC. They are incredibly slow to react, and they know it. So they make quick, even hasty course corrections, and then turn the helm, waiting to find out later if their course corrections even came out right in the first place. Meanwhile, Marvel is quick and agile enough that they can replace the long-standing director of one of their movies, rewrite, and have the whole thing in the can a year or 2 later. They are backed by the guns of an aircraft carrier, yes, but they can make their own maneuvers, and that gives them a great deal of freedom. Now, I don't really blame anyone at Warner Brothers or DC for this, not even screenwriter David Goyer, who has made the bulk of these smaller bad decisions that have given the company's output a bad reputation. They are victims of the system they are stuck working in, a system that might very well work for the other types of movies the studio makes, but in the prolific, even oversubscribed, and hence hyper-competitive superhero market, only serves to bog them down and force them into snap decisions that might have benefited from the luxury of more thought. If I were to give them advice, stupid as I know that would be, it would be this. More sharply demarcate your mainstream production from your comics properties production divisions. Give the comics guys more autonomy and hire someone like Jeff Johns in a Kevin Feige-style position to head up the whole effort and give the thing a sense of cohesion. But in the end, all I really know is this. I'm just a fan who would like to see a lot more Dark Knights and 1978 Supermans, and a lot fewer Green Lanterns or Men of Steel.